We interrupt this program to bring you an important Wayfair message. Wayfair's got style tips for every home. This is Styles McKenzie helping you make those rooms sing. Today's style tip. When it comes to making a statement, treat bold patterns like neutrals. Go wild, like an untamed animal print area rug under a rustic farmhouse table from Wayfair.com. Arr, fierce. This has been your Wayfair style tip to keep those interiors superior.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
Yeah, it was amazing because, I've talked a lot this season about how I'm just trying to enjoy whatever happens. And in the first half was a real test of that because it was bad and also dull from United. It was just completely limp and lacklustre. And Ferguson looked like he was in a state of shock and fury on the sidelines. I mean, he did look visibly stunned. And, I don't think any United fan seeing that starting lineup was particularly stunned that United were deathly poor in that first half.
No, that's right. And I have to say it's a bit of a pattern these days, a feeling of doom and negativity when the team sheet comes out. And too often, and most of it's associated with midfield, isn't it? And too often we think, oh no, there's a bit of a soft underbelly in the centre of midfield there. What are we going to do? And that kind of played out, although, some pretty awful mistakes through the centre of defence as well.
Let's take this a bit at a time. I mean, first of all, I can't wait till we talk about the second half because that really is one of my, even though we didn't win the game, I ended up absolutely loving that game. It was amazing to see us tearing it, trying to score up the Stretford end and the crowd going absolutely ballistic. I mean, it really was like early 90s football all over again. But that first half was the epitome of the worst aspects of 2012 Manchester United. I mean, Giggs in the centre of midfield, not even really in the centre of midfield, in a sort of weird hybrid left-wing central midfielder sort of role. Incredibly ineffective and completely out of the game. And a central midfield of Scholes and Carrick, which was just completely overrun. I mean, that partnership's been so effective, but we've talked time and time again about how the way to get at them is to pressure them. And up against, basically, you could just play Dembele on his own in the Spurs midfield and he'd give Carrick and Scholes a run for their money as a two.
Yeah, and it's the kind of physical nature of Spurs' midfield that really helped to overrun United. So Dembele and Sandro were able to create an awful lot of domination, and then Spurs used their ability to break at pace really, really effectively. Obviously, Gareth Bale's an extreme weapon all on his own, but I thought they moved from back to front very, very quickly, Spurs, and it caused United an awful lot of problems. And it feels like such a broken record because we talk about it all the time, but the lack of cover in front of the back four caused the central defenders, Johnny Evans and Rio Ferdinand, a load of problems. And then there's the issue about where each of them plays. So we had Rio dropping deep, and they seem to have switched sides again, those two, after last season's experiment. And Rio was the deepest of the two, which I guess you'd kind of expect given his age and the fact that he's lost a yard of pace or so. I don't think he's slow by any means. But it left him exposed. Got to say, it really left him exposed. And Johnny Evans didn't have a good game at all in the first half. He was all over the place, and that didn't help Rio one little bit. And I think Rio's taken more of the criticism there, but I think that's more to do with the fact that he got isolated and exposed by Bale, in a really public fashion.
It's a very interesting thing, that switch back to revert to type for Rio to play on the right, when actually it was really working last season with Rio on the left and Evans on the right. And I don't quite understand why Fergie switched that back, whether it's because he was expecting Vidic to come back in, but he had switched Vidic and Rio, so I'm a bit uncertain as to why it's happening. I didn't really understand why it happened the other way round, why they made the switch in the first place, but to switch it back when it was kind of effective, and it just hasn't quite been working so far this season, has it?
Well, clearly not. United have gone behind in 6 games out of 9 so far, isn't it? something like that. And that's saying a lot, right? There's a lot of times United are conceding goals, conceding a lot of cheap goals, conceding goals that wouldn't have happened in the past, conceding goals that wouldn't have happened if there was some protection for the back four. And we'll come on to Cluj in a bit, but conceded a goal there because there was absolutely no cover in wide areas at all, you know. So I think you could probably point to about 80 or 90% of the goals United have conceded this season and say you could fix that. And that's the frustrating thing, because I don't think it's brilliance for the most part that has beaten United this season. It's causing us loads of problems. So 2 defeats in 6 in the Premier League, that's not a good ratio, is it? You know, extrapolate that out and United is nowhere near winning the league. You know, you assume that it won't carry on. You've got to assume, you know, 2 good sides have beaten United, but there's a lot of tough games to come as well. They've got to fix this defence. United can't win the league if we defend like this.
I think I would also argue that we probably can't win the league if Anders Lindegaard is the keeper in the league most often. I think there's something about it. It's not that he's a bad keeper at all. And listen, we have been talking about this every week. But if you look at the Cluj game, okay, they're definitely a massively inferior opposition to Tottenham. But De Gea just gives United something else, you know, both as an outlet, but also in terms of his range of shot stopping. I think specifically the third goal, I mean, Lindegaard didn't do too much wrong for the first couple of goals, but that third goal in particular, Lindegaard kind of parried the ball. I mean, it was very difficult, a chance that came at him at close range, but he did the thing that we always criticise Joe Hart for doing, of putting the ball right into the danger zone with his parry, which De Gea is so good at not doing that. Who knows what would have happened in that moment.
Sure, yeah. In fact, if you want to be really, really hard, you could say that he didn't get down quick enough to Bale's shot either, you know. I mean, it's a harsh criticism because it's hard. It's really hard to say whether De Gea would have saved that or not. But, I mean, in terms of the general analysis, yeah, I don't think Lindegaard's anywhere near the keeper. But for whatever reason, and we've been over it plenty of times now, Ferguson is determined to give them a load of games. Now, it seems that Lindegaard has become the favourite in the league at least, and it looks like he'll probably play at Newcastle, you know, maybe not, who knows? It's really hard to tell at the moment, isn't it?
I mean, I really, really, truly, sincerely hope not, and I don't like saying that about any United player really, but I very sincerely hope that it's De Gea in goal. I think it just should be. I don't get why it isn't, you know. I mean, also, there's that thing that I always have in the back of my mind when I'm talking about Fergie's decision making, which is that he knows better than me. That there's no question about that. He's the best football manager ever, so if he's doing it, it's probably for a reason. But the fact that he looked really genuinely stunned by how bad United were in the first half, when I think we all saw that coming, and there's a lot of talk just building up to half time as United start to make their little 5 minutes before half time effort that they do when they've not been playing well, of, you know, they're all trying to avoid the hairdryer is definitely coming, and it's like, well, he really needs to use the self hairdryer because it's him that's putting us in that mess in the first place, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say I felt at the time that Ferguson had to look in the mirror at his own performance there and whether he got it quite right in terms of the selection. I mean, you know, Giggs was absolutely nowhere near being influential at Anfield the week before and had another game, and Nani's obviously been very much off form recently, although he had a decent game in the second half at least. Yeah. You know, he made some recompense for that, so, you know, I'm not having to go at him for the sake of it, but it didn't quite feel right as a selection, and part of that's to do with the fact that just aren't the options available, and partly to do with a certain amount of stubbornness it appears on Ferguson's part to play some players who are really not performing for United. So yeah, you know, if it's a results business and United got a very poor result there at home to Tottenham, then you have to point the finger at Ferguson and say some blame lies with him. I mean, he never does accept it. He always seems to blame the players, and collectively he very rarely singles them out unless it's David De Gea. But yeah, he didn't say actually I got this wrong, but you know, he never does.
I mean, he didn't even single De Gea out for you know, it didn't influence the match, that the mistake that he was dropped for in the end, you know,
right?
Because United had won, and I'm sure he wouldn't have done if United hadn't won. But listen, let's talk about that second half, because it was absolute throwback stuff. Talking of throwback, Paul Scholes at his incredible, influential best. I mean, I haven't got it broken down by halves, but his passing statistics in that game, 135 out of 148 passes. I mean, it's getting ridiculous. It really is. He was just as an absolute metronome. Barry Glendenning on Football Weekly said that Scholes and Giggs didn't play well in that match, and I was like, you really need to caveat that, because the second half performance from Paul Scholes is one of his great performances, of which there are obviously many to choose from.
I mean, United obviously changed, right? Tactically, there wasn't a huge amount other than Rooney came on and Kagawa played sort of, off the left. And, so the personnel kind of added some extra impetus. But I thought a lot of it was Tottenham. I thought a lot of it was Tottenham's negativity allowed United to play in that way. Specifically allowed Paul Scholes to get the ball and keep passing it, right? They just completely stood off. They went into their shell. Credit to United for changing the way the pattern of the game was going. There was more urgency, and it's not to say that they suddenly wanted it or not, but there was just a bit more oomph about them. And so credit to United for that. But I think there's a big negative in Spurs' column because after they scored the third goal, they just retrenched completely into their own half and looked to defend, and they did that very well, right? You have to say they were very successful at doing that as well. They did limit United to half a dozen sort of shots in that second half, and not loads of obvious chances, although of course off the woodwork a couple of times.
I mean, just an incredible passage of play for 10 minutes in that game where we came back to 2-1. They immediately pegged us back to 3-1 with some horrible defending, but then the crowd just didn't give up in that match. It was like the antithesis of the crowd at the Everton game last season, the 4-4, where the crowd was kind of complacent and tired seeming, but there was like an absolute hunger around the ground, just endless repetition of Ferguson's Red and White Army, which is like a beautiful thing to hear after all this time. But and the players responded absolutely brilliantly, because as soon as Tottenham had scored their third, we were back with our second, and unbelievably Van Persie missed one, maybe two gilt-edged chances.
Yeah. He's got 7 in 8 appearances for United, but he probably should have 9 in 8 or something. Yeah, he had some good chances against Spurs, didn't quite make it, but I guess that's going to happen. And you're totally right about the crowd. It was the best atmosphere at Old Trafford for quite some time. It just doesn't happen very often, and it's a shame that the Old Trafford crowd is not always behind the team in quite that way. But whether it's complacency, I don't know, or definitely a changing nature of the type of people who are at Old Trafford. I think that's changed the atmosphere quite considerably over the years. But good to hear a bit of Fergie's Red and White Army. It's not brought out often enough.
I think hunger is a huge part of it, because I just think it's that kind of, we've all been shaken out of our doze a bit by the fact that City actually did manage to win the league last season. I mean, financial doping or no financial doping, it's a huge thing that happened, and I think there's a kind of desperation around Old Trafford to get the trophy back, and that does always tend to lead to an improvement in atmosphere, I think. A word about Kagawa: not a good performance at all from Kagawa. A little better in the second half. But generally speaking, I mean, really not in the game, and received quite a lot of criticism from a few United fans. But, he just wasn't involved. You got Carrick and Scholes both attempting, well, in Scholes' case, way over 100 passes, and Carrick, just pipping 100. And Kagawa's not, he's received the ball 44 times in the game, 35 of 39 passes. There's only 7 forward passes attempted. It's not what you want from him, is it? I mean, he did get a goal, and he took his goal very well, and he was involved more in the second half. And I think the setup in the first half obviously didn't suit him well, but he wasn't able to impose himself on that game at all.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure that United are using him in the right way at the moment. I mean, positionally, yes, playing just off the striker, it's the right position for him, but a lot of the passing does go wide, so he needs it in the right areas in order to be really effective. There's a great piece in this month's Red issue, whether it's true or not, I don't know. It's an anecdote from earlier this season where United weren't playing so well, and Ferguson apparently is pointing at Kagawa at half-time and telling the players, just pass it to Park. All the players are too terrified to correct him on which player it really was. So, whether that's true or not, I don't know, but I like the anecdote. But look, seriously, we haven't had the best out of Kagawa over the last month or so, after a couple of, standout performances right at the beginning of the season. So there's loads more to come from him. I think United do need to use him the right way. I think it's going to be interesting exactly how that happens with Rooney and Van Persie now fit, and what sort of system United end up playing, because, take the one against Cluj, for example, that was extremely narrow, and I'm not sure that plays to United's strengths necessarily. Otherwise, if there's going to be 2 wide players in the team, it might well be that Kagawa's one of those wide players, or perhaps it's Rooney, but either way, it's a square peg in a round hole.
A word about Rooney: absolutely excellent when he came on in the second half. Brilliant to see all those barometers of form, the first touch, the passing, wonderful, created a goal, just was really effective and dynamic, looks really fit again. That little extra rest caused by that injury might have done him the world of good, actually.
Yeah, when he loses all that puppy fat, he'll be a great player.
No, I mean, I don't think. I think he looks in pretty good nick at the moment, doesn't he? Rooney.
He looks fine, and it was a very good performance from him in that second half, and we want more of that. And going on into the Cluj game, he almost replicated it. He was so deep, wasn't he? And that's what I'm saying. They've got to find the right position for Rooney and Van Persie and Kagawa and all these great attacking players United have. And there's going to be the temptation for Ferguson to try and cram all of them in there and compromise United's shape as a result. And it'll be interesting to see over the rest of the season whether Fergie can get that balance right or not.
It will indeed. I mean, the Cluj game, you end up with Kagawa and Rooney basically both of them playing behind Van Persie, and actually it was pretty effective. We really dominated that game, and if it wasn't for the fact that our back four just looked as permeable as Ignatius Rock, Evra with an astoundingly terrible piece of defending for their goal. I mean, properly breathtakingly awful, and Johnny Evans not too much better.
Yeah, so, I mean, Evra's out of position because he's very, very narrow, but it's that thing I said earlier, he's got no protection in front of him, so the whole team is very, very narrow. He's playing winger, he's playing fullback and everything in between, and I don't think that quite helped him there, so I'll give him a little bit of forgiveness because I don't think the system helped him very much, but he's 10 yards away from his man, so that first rule of defending a cross is to stop the cross, isn't it? Second rule of defending a cross is to not ball watch and not make an assumption about where all the players are and where the ball might be going. So Johnny Evans runs to the near post and got it completely wrong. So not a great piece of defending there either, all round. I'm sure both of them got some criticism for that. And Evra's taken an awful lot of criticism from the social media world, and he generally does these days, and it'd be interesting to see whether Ferguson takes the same view. I suspect not. As I said a few times this season, I think Evra's in it for the long haul, and he'll just get a rest now. I don't see him being rested at Newcastle, for example.
I mean, a lot of people talk about Buchner, and it's ridiculous because he's played once for United, and that was against Wigan, and everyone was kind of raving about the performance, but he basically put in the exact performance Patrice Evra would have, but he scored his goal, kind of bounced in off the keeper, whereas Evra's would have probably hit the post, because that's just how it all goes. But he's just not. There's no evidence base to suggest that Buchner is a valid replacement for Evra or would be better. It's just that people are so fed up with Evra's kind of mistake proneness, and I'm a big fan of him. I like his attitude. I like how much effort he puts in on the pitch. I like what he adds to our attacking play. But he does. He does look exposed by the system, but actually for Cluj's goal, I think he was just very poor decision making, basically, rather than particularly being exposed by the system, because he had plenty of time to recover his position, I think.
He probably did, but again, he's pulled out of position there because of the nature of how United played.
Yeah.
United played very, very narrow. Right, and they tuck both fullbacks in sometimes as well. So look, it's one very bad goal. I thought the response from United was okay. It did enough, didn't they? And obviously completely dominated the ball. Cluj were very happy to sit on the back of their own 18-yard line and defend this, and it didn't help United in some circumstances going forward that there was no width at all. I mean, Rooney basically played in midfield. Hernandez seemed a bit lost at times, and Van Persie was the pivot to the attack, and it didn't feel like there was a lot of focus. Cleverly tried to join at times. I thought he had a very neat, nice game, and I thought defensively United did benefit from having Fletcher in there.
Massively.
Yes, so he made some important interceptions. He got about the Cluj midfield. It looked like he was offering a real screen in front of the back four, and that could be a real bonus for United in the months and weeks ahead. I mean, we talked about how open that midfield is at times, and Fletcher's the one player in the squad that could change that.
I mean, I was thinking a lot about it yesterday because he really does make an enormous difference. It's incredibly nice to see him play 90 minutes again, and this time, in the Champions League. I mean, okay, so Cluj are not a particularly high level of opponent, and he did look absolutely exhausted by the end of the game. I thought he was moving very slowly, but I mean, he was incredibly effective, and a couple of times one of their players had the ball, right, and then he ran up to him, and then he took the ball back off him. Imagine that, one of our midfielders ran up to one of their midfielders and got the ball off him.
I know, making a tackle, it's so old-fashioned, isn't it? Fergie the dinosaur.
I mean, but it was glorious, and actually they worked really well as a midfield three. I mean, Anderson was pretty wasteful. That shot seems to have gone to his head a little bit, and there was one moment right at the end of the game. The game's basically over. This is just before the full-time whistle, where Welbs makes a run and is about to break free of the defence and beat the offside trap, and Anderson just kicks it sort of not even near him, as if he was. I really don't know what happened, but Danny Welbeck just looked at Anderson at that moment to say, is that really what just happened? He couldn't believe the quality of the distribution, or lack thereof.
There were moments from Anderson in the game, but moments, again, a player of now his experience and the price ought to be having a bigger impact on games like this. Should he not be one of United's creative hubs if that's his role? And it didn't quite happen. He made some good runs. He beat his man a couple of times. Made some good passes. Made some bad passes. Had a couple of shots. There's something there, but it's never quite enough. And we'll see. Is he going to get any better with the running games? Can't see it. And Ferguson said in midweek that he sees no reason, given that Scholes and Carrick, this is his quote, not mine, Scholes and Carrick are playing so well, that Anderson should get in the side at the moment. It's quite honest assessment about that. So, probably Anderson won't play at Newcastle. He'll be in and out of the side again. That won't help him. But then again, he's done nothing to deserve a long run in the side.
I want to talk about some positives from that game, though, because I don't think it was a particularly negative thing, that game. I thought, as you said Tom Cleverley was quite neat. I thought he was excellent. I mean, let's discount the quality of opposition for a second, because you can only play the team that's in front of you, and given the very peculiar decision to play without width against a team that's going to sit very deep, Cleverley looked like a few times like he had the key to unlocking the door, really, and he does. I really like the way he makes United tick when he's in the side. I really like his kind of creativity and vision, and his kind of flair for doing the slightly unexpected. There's often the back heel or the slip between the legs or something. Just he's just got a bit of magic about him, I think, whilst being very functional and effective as well.
Yeah, I mean, he's good with the non-safe pass, right? Which is nice. He's a creative player, and he will seek out an option that's not just the one that's 10 yards away, and that's really good. I have to say, I'm really not sure what his best position is. I don't think it's number 10, and I know he's played there like once or twice for United and a couple of times for England from the GB side. I'm not sure he's going to be effective enough in that position to really be a top-class number 10. I think his best position probably will be a little bit deeper, and that's where he's played most of the time this season, and maybe he can be really effective there, and not deep per se, but of A2 in United's midfield, rotating and recycling possession really, really quickly and making things happen. Maybe that's his best position. He's 23 now, so it's we still think of him as a youngster because he's only actually played something like 20 games for United, but he's not actually that young, and the time in the next 2 or 3 seasons he's really got to make a mark and start having some more authority if he really wants to be a top player.
Yeah, sure. I think it's great news for United if number 10 isn't his best position as well, because we're overstocked in number 10 and understocked a bit deeper. So if it turns out that actually he's a midfielder, brilliant. That's great news. In terms of the long-term future of the squad, you think Kagawa can play number 10, Nick Powell sort of trying to be a number 10, he's very young, and that this is all ifs, ands and buts kind of thing. But yeah, it's great if Cleverley sort of sees his long-term future as a number 8, whatever one of those is, in the kind of him and Carrick with a player ahead of him, a kind of Scholes replacement in the squad. Fantastic. I mean, Paul Scholes is irreplaceable, obviously. But yeah, it was good to see that kind of midfield combination of Anderson and Cleverley massively benefit from Darren Fletcher. But you have to say Carrick and Scholes would benefit from Darren Fletcher often as well. And there'll be times where if it is an option to play Fletcher in big games later this season, it's just going to be invaluable.
Yeah.
It really does make an enormous difference.
And it's one of those things of questions of balance again, isn't it? Because if we play Fletcher in the middle, are you dropping one of Carrick and Scholes and therefore lose some creativity, or are you playing Fletcher in addition to, and therefore probably one of the wide players goes, or maybe one of the strikers, and so it's trying to get that good balance if Fletcher is going to play, and it's still ifs and buts with him because he's not quite at the very top of his fitness and sharpness, is he yet? I mean, that's fairly obvious towards the end of that game. He was huffing and blowing quite a bit. But really great to see him back, and I think he adds an awful lot to United's game there. One thing we ought to talk about the Cluj game, the goals.
Oh,
so,
brilliant.
Fantastic header from Persie off his shoulder, and then a really, really fine finish and a lovely pass from Rooney for the winner.
Just absolutely, I mean, what a moment of sheer football joy that goal was. I was watching it on my TiVo box, and just they did not play enough replays for my taste, so I just watched it about 8 times before getting on with the rest of the match, because just an absolutely glorious finish, stunning, and as you say, a beautiful pass from Rooney. Also worth pointing out, some people have been talking about Van Persie's overall contribution being slightly lacking in games, but he was in United's half when that move started, and just in the right place on the end of the pass for a moment of ORVP magic.
I think his overall contribution is fine. He's the pivot of the attack, so we wouldn't want him to be wandering quite as much as Rooney does. And look, he's perfectly capable of that. For the first 6 or so seasons that he was at Arsenal, he often played in wide of a 3, or he actually as an actual out-and-out winger at times. So he's perfectly capable of playing in other positions. I think if he's going to be the pivot of United's attack, he needs to be in the right areas, and he's getting the goals. It will mean that Rooney doesn't score as many goals. If he's not playing in that position, he's playing very deep. He probably won't get over 30 goals this season. He hasn't got a goal yet, has he? Van Persie's got 7, is it now? But that's fine if it's for the benefit of the team and it suits everybody, then great. Rooney, I thought he had a good game too, and I think he will be very important to United obviously this season if he stays fit. And just the one thing with Rooney, when he's playing off, he sometimes does go very, very deep, and it just made midfield quite crowded, and I kind of understand why he does it, because there were 10 men sat on the edge of the Cluj box, and he's trying to find space, and he's trying to influence the game, and so just got to get the right balance there, because it could end up with United playing a lot of players in a very central area, which is what happened at times against Cluj.
Yeah, absolutely. A word about Rafael da Silva as well, who I thought had a really good game against Cluj, and is in the middle of his best run of form for United, I would say. It seems like a long time since we've been talking about da Silva doing something stupid to get sent off or conceding a goal.
And he's staying fit. Yeah, so look, if he stays fit and plays well, which he is doing, we can expect a couple of mistakes for him, but he's going to mature faster if he plays a lot of games. I really hope he plays over 40 games this season. I think that'll be his breakthrough season, and we can look forward to having a very fine fullback on his hands. Fingers crossed with him though, because he could look wrong at something and break his leg. So he has been made of glass. Maybe they found the key to his fitness. Maybe Fabio's just taking all the bad luck with him to QPR.
Or maybe Fabio was like a bad influence behind the scenes, getting him to go out to McDonald's with Anderson and stuff late at night, and that's why he kept getting himself injured. But and Fabio's safely under the wing of Mark Hughes, which to me got to be one of the scariest places in world football.
Well, he's under the wing of the QPR physio at the moment, isn't he? But
he is, of course.
Best of luck to Fabio, but right now his brother is doing a fine job for United.
Yeah, and it's, United fans have to have patience with Da Silva, because he's learning a very difficult position, which is being a fullback, and he's learning it at one of the most difficult clubs in the world to be a fullback at. It's a hard job being a Man United fullback, no question about that.
And it's a very demanding public as well, and criticism of him is very harsh. He's still only 21.
Yeah,
right. So
yeah, absolutely,
and he's still a young guy. I know he's played a lot of games for United, but he's got lots to learn. I think we've got a good player on our hands there.
It seems to me that it might be that time in the show where we take a few questions from the listeners. There's been a variety of stuff, and quite a lot of stuff about Fergie. A question from Oye Opaneye asking whether we're in the position that we're in because of Fergie or in spite of Fergie. Kind of overall really harsh criticism of Sir Alex always sits weird with me because of his track record. But on an individual match-by-match basis, he does seem to make extremely eccentric decisions sometimes. And then, I find his handling of the media extremely frustrating, although he was incredibly effective at changing the story after the Tottenham game. The story became about, foreign players diving. He gave some quote about that, and that was in all the papers, and there was hardly any in-depth analysis of how much of a mistake Ferguson had made in that first half.
Yeah, I thought it was basically offensive. It goes alongside the typical Germans, and whenever an Italian tells me it's pasta, I look under the sauce. It's just patently not true. And you want to talk about a couple of the worst divers in the country, you can talk about Ashley Young and Danny Welbeck. So let's chuck that one out. It's complete nonsense from Fergie there, but a nice smokescreen. It's a complete diversion from what was a pretty serious loss. Some odd stuff with Fergie in the media. So recently, how technical sketchy was he when asked about the Ryder Cup?
He did not want to talk about the subject of golf.
Very, very odd, because he's waxed lyrical about golf before when talking on behalf of one of his sponsors. Not that I'm saying those two things are linked, of course. I wouldn't dare say it. Back to the question, I think United have overperformed in the last 2 seasons because Ferguson is able to do that. Given the resources that have been there, we've got more attacking resources now. The squad is better than it was last season. You hope that means a better result as a result. Problem is that there are still some big holes, and that's going to cause United a problem. Ferguson does make some eccentric decisions. He loves a bit of rotation. He wasn't called Tinkerbell for nothing. He called that from the 80s onwards, so he likes to change, we know that, and often it's for very good reason, because he spreads the workload out. Sometimes it's really bizarre and really hard to fathom.
I mean, how confident are you in his abilities now, right, this season?
I don't know. He doesn't seem to have gone mad just yet, like clearly happened to Brian Clough, who he lost it. He was obviously in the final stages of dementia when he got Forest relegated. But, Ferguson seems to be all there. I don't think his decision-making has changed particularly. He's stubborn about some things. He's angry about some things. He clearly has a power over players to motivate them. He gets most things right. He gets some things wrong, and on balance he gets many more things right than he gets wrong, and that's why he's been so successful over the years.
Yeah, and I think that's basically where I come down on it, which is that, there is the kind of the absolute blind faith in him that any criticism of any decision he ever makes is a travesty or heresy is very frustrating. But equally, the idea that he doesn't deserve any faith from a kind of footballing standpoint seems ridiculous to me, because he's clearly earned it time and time again in the face of massive criticism and massive doubt. So, fundamentally, whilst I don't understand what he's doing at the moment, I kind of assume he knows what he's doing, because he's the best football manager ever. On one of the subjects that I keep coming back to, this goalkeeping thing, I wondered whether there's any kind of sports sciencey reason that I don't understand that De Gea shouldn't play too many games just yet. I don't know whether there is or not, but he is a very young man, and being a goalkeeper is a very kind of specifically physically taxing thing to do. So I did wonder. I just was thinking about that. Like this thing where Arsene Wenger kept bringing Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain off after 65 minutes because that's what you're sort of supposed to do statistically to avoid injuries and stuff. I wondered whether it was something to do with that kind of thing.
I doubt it. I mean, he's played plenty of games for Atletico.
Yeah.
And we've had plenty of young players before that played lots and lots of games as well, Rooney, for example, say, and in much more physically demanding positions than goalkeeper.
Okay. As I say, it wasn't like a conclusion.
Sports scientists, write in and tell us.
Yeah, please do. On to another question. Dean O'Sullivan, who wrote us an extremely nice review on iTunes, so thank you for that, Dean, asked the question, who is the best co-commentator or pundit? And Ed, I think we have to say this is in a field in which Gary Neville is ineligible for the title, because I can't see either of us picking a different co-commentator pundit to be better than Gary Neville.
Well, it's Gary Neville, isn't it? Yeah. So why is he ineligible?
Just because he's obviously the best. I'm interested in whether there is another good co-commentator in the game.
You got to love a bit of Roy Keane and his scowl. Yeah, you'd be frightened, wouldn't you? He's not co-com, but he does a lot of punditry.
He does indeed.
I've always liked Martin O'Neill.
Yeah, Martin O'Neill's a brilliant co-com.
As a pundit, yeah. I think he's an excellent pundit, yeah. Most of the co-commentators I hate with a passion. So any time Loro gets a game is awful. Niall Quinn, forget it. Terrible. Hate Alan Smith. Terrible again. Beglin, God, just don't get me onto Beglin.
But I've forgotten all about him. Andy Townsend, he's not in the running.
No, he just commentates in cliches and banalities.
Pat Nevin's a very fine pundit and co-commentator, and apparently a pretty decent indie DJ too.
I like him, actually. Yeah, he was fine on Channel 5 on Thursday nights. Unfortunately, he had to cope with Stan Collymore at the same time.
Alan Smith, you are no word Smith. I would like to hear less of this and more of other things. There you go. That's my long-awaited Alan Smith poem, the sequel to Niall Quinn. I didn't really put very much time into that, as you...
It's a difficult second poem, that one.
Exactly. It's so difficult to pick good co-commentators. I think, it's quite difficult to be a good co-commentator. Just if you look at the history of English television football coverage, there have not been many great second chairs. I quite like David Pleat as a co-commentator. I like the way he says, "Good evening, everybody," at the beginning of all his commentaries.
He doesn't have a goalgasm, though, does he?
He doesn't.
David Pleat. Nev's the standard bearer now. Even if you're a Scouser and you hate him because of who he is, you've got to appreciate the quality of the analysis and the fact that you can actually learn something from Gary Neville, and that's very rare amongst most pundits.
I mean, I have to say that a lot of the praise for Gary Neville is about his punditry rather than his co-commentating, and the fact that he gets an hour to talk about stuff on Monday Night Football does make a big difference. But there isn't another person talking about football for a living who you'd want to listen to for an hour. He's just the best there's ever been, and I've never watched him break down a game or talk about an analysis without learning something, as you say, and that's really unusual, and it's kind of sad that it's so unusual.
They should ship some of the pundits off to Guantanamo. They get confessions pretty quickly. They should ship Terry Venables off there and just let him talk until he actually finishes a sentence before starting the next one. I think maybe his brain's running quicker than his mouth. There's something weird going on where he never actually finishes the point he was trying to make before starting another one.
He's just got a lot to say. It's that Christmas tree formation, but in conversation form. It's very flowing. There's a lot to it. Let's move on. There's quite enough of this. Talking of contributions from the listeners, we had a competition last week to win a delectable Manchester United scarf signed by a series of Manchester United legends and also some people that used to play for Manchester United. And the winner of this, unquestionably my favourite answer that came into the question, what would you ask Ashley Grimes if you could ask him anything? And Neil Brennan, which is at NRD Brennan, says, I would ask Ashley Grimes if he really knew my dad Ray, who said for years that he grew up with Grimes and was a far better player than him. So there you go. That scarf is going to wing its way to you if you send me a DM on the old Twitter. I say,
so, United have a game at the weekend, and it's going to be a tough one away to Newcastle. He spanked there last season, 3-0. A pretty torrid match, that one, particularly Van der Lindegaard, but for the whole team as well. But Newcastle not in very good form at the moment, 10th in the Premier League, haven't won a game for quite a while, and I suppose they beat Norwich, but a succession of draws in recent games and don't feel like they've really hit top form.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's, I think it's going to be difficult for them, but then also I can't help thinking it's going to be very difficult for United. You think that they're a classic sort of game-raising outfit, aren't they?
Yes, and especially at home.
Yeah.
And they have a fine crowd there who really get behind the side. The couple of players in Barr and Cisse have been blowing hot and cold, haven't they? But a couple of fine strikers. They've definitely got the material to cause United damage. They've got some good players in midfield. Tiote's fit again now, I believe, and Cabaye is obviously a mainstay of Newcastle midfield and France now. So they've got the tools to cause United some real problems. They just haven't been playing very well at the moment, and that plays in United's favour. United, there's got to be a reaction from Tottenham, obviously, and it'll be interesting to see what kind of formation Fergie plays, because we've got to weigh up the jumble of mess that was the first half against Tottenham, against the very fine response in the second half, and the weird formation, frankly, that was deployed against Cluj with such a narrow scope to it. I can't imagine that will happen again.
Very interesting that Nani was selected for the game against Tottenham, not just because of his poor form, but also because apparently he's been punching youth teamers.
Yeah, you know what? I'd read something about this before. I don't think this happened recently.
Oh, really? So it might be an older story.
Yeah, that was my feeling on it. There wasn't very much detail in this report. It's obviously not serious enough to have excluded him, is it? I would think some of his performance were serious enough to have excluded him. But yeah, no, he's picked up. Of course, United don't have very many options in wide areas right at the moment, with that Ashley Young injured and Valencia also out. So Nani's really the only winger left at the club. Obviously, Rooney and Kagawa and Giggs will all come into contention if Ferguson does decide to play too wide.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's very difficult to say what the selection's going to be. I guess you think Lindegaard will play.
Yeah, I suspect so. I think the back four picks itself, really. I think Lindegaard, and then it's Evra, Ferdinand, Evans and Raphael. And then the big decisions are in midfield areas. I'm sure that Rooney and Van Persie will both play. So does that mean Kagawa's on bench again? Do they push Kagawa wide and play Nani on the right? Does Welbeck come into the contention on the left? And is it going to be Scholes and Carrick in the centre again? Has Fletcher played his way into the side? Probably not. He probably can't play another game now. So probably Scholes and Carrick will start. So there's a few permutations there, but I suspect it'll be around about that.
I mean, so you think it's going to be a sort of 4-4-2-ish sort of thing?
Yeah, 4-2 holding Scholes and Carrick and the three attacking players supporting Van Persie.
I don't know, I would really like to see someone else in there, especially last season was just absolutely horrendous, wasn't it? The game at St James's Park, we got completely battered in midfield, and it could happen again. It's not impossible. I mean, you say Bar and Cisse haven't been firing, but they as you say, you said they were intermittently firing, and that's the case, but, as I said earlier, Newcastle just love to raise their game at St James's Park against us, and it is a real worry that it's going to happen again. I mean, this is just a moment to celebrate the fact that the last game we played them at St James's Park, whilst it was horrendous on a footballing level, in terms of football popular culture, it was a glorious moment because that was the pre-match interview when Demba Ba revealed his deep abiding love for strawberry syrup, and that was a thing to behold.
Yeah, quite bizarre. Yeah, I remember that interview. It was really quite odd, but I think it kind of cemented Bar's place in the footballing, kind of a collective affection, didn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, and well deserved too. He was asked, "Is it good for you?" and he said, "I think so." It was just never contemplated the idea that this kind of sugary syrup might not be good for his peak fitness. Anyway, I hope the old syrup muncher doesn't do too well against us. He was obviously excellent against us in that game, and I hope we managed to nullify their attacking threat. I hope that our defence looks more solid. I hope that De Gea plays behind that defence, and I hope that Van Persie continues this run of scoring goal after goal after goal, because it's a glorious thing.
Yeah, and he's staying fit as well. One other point to mention about this game, of course, Newcastle playing Europa League against Bordeaux on the Thursday night, and United played on the Tuesday night, so that helps. Extra 48 hours. Okay, so United flew a very long way to Transylvania to play that game, and Newcastle played at home. But it still makes a difference. I think that 48-hour turnaround from the Thursday to the Sunday is pretty tough.
Very good point. And then it's international break, so we won't be back with another one of these next week. I'm afraid the season is once again being broken up just as it starts to get exciting, and we all settle into the momentum of it. So Rantcast 2 weeks today. In the meantime, if you want to get hold of us, you can get Ed at United Rant. You can get me at UTD Rantcast. You can get both of us by going onto the Facebook page and making comments or liking the Rantcast story, and also you can head to unitedrant.co.uk, leave a comment on the show page, you can leave a review on iTunes. If you want to go to unitedrant.co.uk/donate and give us some money, you can do that. We will spend it on stuff for the show, and otherwise I guess all that's left for us to do is to make our world famous terrible predictions for the game against Newcastle.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a tough one for United, even if Newcastle haven't played well recently, so I'm going to say 1-1.
I think we're going to lose again. I'm sorry to say. The very rare prediction of a loss, but I think we're going to lose 1-2, and then I think we're going to come back from the international break and kickstart our season. And I think at some point we're really going to kick into top gear. I do still think it's coming.
I'd like to see it, and I'm not expecting it this week, but you never know. I'm off to Brazil, off to do a bit of scouting for a few young kids we can export to United. Well, not quite, but if you're in Brazil and you're a Rantcast fan, I'll be somewhere around Ipanema Beach.
Tall and tan and young and lovely, Ed is going to Ipanema, and then he's going round the Da Silva's house for tea.
Very good. Well, I'll see you after that.
All right, back in 2 weeks' time.
Looking forward to it. Have a great break, and let's hope we're celebrating a United win.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.